Good morning, First Orlando family. Today is Monday, April 6th. I think it's day like 11 of our stay-at-home order, and we're preparing for the final week in Jesus' life here, the final few days. I want to encourage you to be watching Pastor David tonight at 7 as we walk through the last days of Jesus, and David will give us an account of what happens each day as we move towards Good Friday, and then of course Easter at home on next Sunday. Today's passage I want to look at is actually in chapter 1 of Philippians, and again, one of the really well-known verses in this short little book that Paul wrote. Before I read it, and by the way, I'm going to read in the Message version today, just because of the vernacular, because of the simple language that he uses, Eugene Peterson uses in this in the Message. I think might be helpful to capture the idea that he's trying to communicate. This can be a pretty harsh reality because it's where Paul talks about whether he lives or dies, it's okay. And I know this is a tough season for some, but yet at the same time, it's a season of opportunity for many of us. And so I want to read two sections. First, chapter 1, starting in verse 12, and then we're going to jump down to verse 20. It's a little longer than I've had in other sections, other devotions, but I want to read it to you. I think it'll bless you. It says this: Paul's reporting, remember, he's in prison, probably house arrest, and is writing this to the church that he planted, to believers that he loved a lot. And he says, I want to report to you, friends, that my imprisonment here has had the opposite of its intended effect. Instead of being squelched, the message has actually prospered. And all the soldiers here, and everyone else too, found out that I'm in jail because of this Messiah. And that piqued their curiosity. And now they've learned all about him. Not only that, but most of the followers of Jesus here have become far more sure of themselves and their faith than ever, speaking out fearlessly about God and about the Messiah. And then in verse 20, on the contrary, everything happened to me in this jail only serves to make Christ more accurately known, regardless of whether I live or die. They didn't shut me up. They gave me a pulpit. Alive, I'm Christ's messenger. Dead, I'm his bounty. Life versus even more life. I can't lose. And in the traditional translation, for me to live is Christ, but to die is gain, is the way he finishes that section. The idea that I want to focus on today is the burden that so many of us have during this time. Is where is God during this, and is this something happening to me because God's mad at me or he's angry with me? And sometimes we take the circumstances of life and we personalize them, and we just assume that God is this cosmic killjoy seeking how he can hurt us or harm us or cause us pain. Or sometimes we view God as a distant, uninvolved being who isn't participating with us in life. And neither of those are accurate. It is true that life can be hard in this current circumstance. I know there's probably people listening today that this is not working out very well for you right now, and maybe it's a financial issue, or maybe you're struggling with health, or you have a family member that's affected. Either way, in our city in Central Florida, because of the tourism industry and so much of our economy is based on that, it's incredible the financial impact that this has had and is going to have in the months to follow. And so I know that there's some that are listening and wondering, man, where is God in this? And is God mad at me? And is he angry? And is this why this is happening? And I think it comes from a perspective of us just assuming that God is frustrated with us and that he's tired of us. And I want to remind you what I said, I think it was yesterday or day before, or I should say Saturday or Friday, about God working on us, and he takes pleasure in the work that he does in us. We are not a nuisance to God. We are his prized possession. He loves us. He loves you, and he cares deeply for you, and he wants the best for you in ways that we can't fully understand in this life. Challenges happen and difficulties happen, and it happens to the good and the bad. Regardless of our walk with Christ, the storms hit all of us. The difference is when we're walking with God, we have his presence and we have his strength. And then some of these situations that, like what Paul was saying, it looked on the outside like this was going to shut him up and be the end of him. And in fact, the opposite happened. And sometimes in life's most challenging moments, when it looks like everything about us should be causing us to cave in, the strength and the peace that we have in God, and a lot of times, the people that I've seen walk through this, they can't really explain it on their own, but it's just something that can be seen in them, that's built from their own relationship with God. They actually have the opportunity, you actually have the opportunity to, when people's interest is piqued, you have an opportunity to live a life that interests people in a relationship with God through his Son, Jesus Christ. It comes from this idea of, is God for me or is God against me? And I want to encourage you today, your God is for you. It's what Paul knew. And Paul knew that God was with him in that situation and using everything that was happening to him in a way that would build Paul up to be a stronger follower, and would also deliver the message in a stronger, more authentic way. Being a follower of Jesus doesn't mean that challenges won't come our way and that there might not be difficulty. In fact, Jesus said we will have tribulation. He knew that trouble would come. Sometimes we even have additional troubles because we're believers. In this situation, that's not the reality, but we can't escape what's happening all around us. What we can do is walk through it differently. And I think one of the ways that we can do that is when we come to this realization and understanding that God is for us. He is one who takes delight in us. Author Max Lucado did a book several years ago called The Applause of Heaven. It kind of built the idea in my mind of something I'd never thought about before, that God is actually delighting in me. And I want to remind you that he's delighting in you. I want to finish by reading just a short section of Max's, I think it may have been one of his first books that he wrote. It was certainly one of the ones that made him popular early on in his writings. It's called The Applause of Heaven, and he's describing God's delight. And here's what he said: "Sacred delight is getting good news coming through the back door of your heart. It's what you'd always dreamed of but never expected. It's the too good to be true coming true. It's having God as your pinch hitter, your lawyer, your dad, your biggest fan, and your best friend. God on your side, in your heart, out in front, and protecting your back. It's hope where you least expected to find it. It's flower in a sidewalk." Today, find hope in your God who loves you and delights in you and takes pleasure in the work that he does in you. God bless you. Have a great day.